Hi, my name's Chris Stern. I grew up in New York Yearly Meeting um, and spent a lot of time at Silver Bay, which is where they have the annual sessions, or had, and still do maybe. Um, my story revolves around returning to Silver Bay later as an adult and my experiences there. Um, Silver Bay is a YMCA camp that the Yearly Meeting uses for their summer yearly meeting gathering, which was a really smart idea because it got lots and lots of families to attend that way because there's all kinds of camp activities and there's a beautiful lake there. Um, I was in the process of studying music when I felt what I didn't know at the time was a call into the ministry. And instead of pursuing a career in music, um, which was my intention, I got into a large tug of what I would call a tug of war with God about it. And I pulled the rope as hard as I could, but that was really no competition. I mean, the harder I pulled, there just wasn't any give at all. And all I was getting back was lots of love. And so instead of going on to graduate studies, I went to Pendle Hill to study Quaker ministry with Sandra Cronk, who was there at the time, Bill Tabor, and also Lewis Benson, who was one of the authorities on early Quaker writings. And in um, 85, began traveling in the ministry. 1985, began traveling in the ministry among friends. Been to Powell House many times and met Regina. Um, so back to my story. As a kid, I loved Silver Bay. As an adult, things were different. In this bucolic setting with warm, sunny days, the adults whiled away the hours in the auditorium, going through the business at hand. The sun beat down on the roof, and the monotonous business beat down on those of us who were foolish enough to be sitting inside. Finally, sometime in the afternoon, we could escape to go swim in the water. Then it was back in the evening for more pain and suffering. It's really amazing to me that so many of the adults seem to thrive on what seemed to me felt like purgatory. Here we were again, revising the book of faith and practice in a 10-year process of wordsmithing. And why were we doing this? The revision committee had been asked to make it more up to date and to modernize the language. This might sound familiar to some of you. They had interpreted this as a request to take out all the Christian language and biblical references. Some friends liked the new draft version, some friends hated it. It seemed to me that each time they went through this revision process, the new version had less faith and more practice. I got to the point where I really didn't care anymore. It was hot. I just wanted to go swimming. As the process dragged on endlessly that night, I really wondered what I was doing there. I had tried for the past 3 years to bring a message of light and hope to friends in many different places all over the country, including many meetings in my own yearly meeting. Spoken on numerous occasions and in numerous committees and meetings about my experience of finding Christ as a light and teacher within me, and calling friends to this experience together. Earlier in the week, I'd given a report on my travels in the ministry to the sessions, and many friends were very loving and supportive. It seemed to me a time of deepening, and I even remember a vocal prayer. Quite extraordinary. But then it was back to business as usual, as they plowed ahead with the agenda as planned. Many friends seemed to thrive and were passionate about, quotes, Quaker process. In fact, it seemed to me that many times the process itself seemed to be much more important than anything that was being discussed. There were continuous long discussions about the right process, but little, if any, interest in the faith which was supposed to be at the center of it. It all simply made me miserable. It was like a large machine that you couldn't turn off. In fact, one of the most powerful Quaker-related dreams I've ever had was about a big, very big machine. The machine took up a huge area in a large open warehouse. It required constant monitoring, oiling, and repairs to keep it going. Lots of different people were running around and moving quickly, attending to all of its needs to ensure that it kept running. I was in this warehouse going from one person to another, asking the questions about what product this big machine was producing. What is this purpose of this machine? What is it doing? I asked. None of them had an answer to my question. All they could say is, I don't have time to be concerned about that. My job is to keep this machine running. Then off they went in a hurry to oil or fix the next area of the machine so it could keep going. After I had that dream, I woke up in a sweat and promptly resigned from my position on a number of Quaker committees. By this time, New York Yearly Meeting had accepted me as a, quote, voice crying in the wilderness. One of the elders even said to me, "You are our prophet." I guess I should have been honored to have that designation, but I knew what generally happened to people like that, and I wasn't interested in being a part of that scenario. It seemed to me that their real agenda was to keep me as far away as possible from the machinery so that it could keep running. I spent a lot of time and energy challenging the machine beast and imploring them to find the off switch so that we could listen to God. Sometimes there would be an audible pause, and it seemed like the machine had gone into a neutral gear. I sensed a more hopeful feeling in the air, but the pause did not usually last more than a few minutes, and you could hear the buzz of the machine back in gear again. No one knew where the off switch was or dared to even try to find it. After many hours of battle with the machine beast, I was worn out again. It was another hot night of pure torture in the auditorium, and as I sat there, I tried to escape by wallowing in a lake of self-pity. At least I could swim there for a while. Eventually, I got up and walked out of the auditorium that evening and went down to the edge of Lake George to complain to God. It was a gorgeous starlit night with cool breeze. You could see the lights in the auditorium in the distance where the business continued to go on. Meanwhile, I paced back and forth on the boat dock, wondering if I should just jump in. Finally sat down, resting my feet above the water, saying, I've had it with these people. They don't want to listen. I've been doing this for years, and what's it done? It's not worth it. They're a bunch of stubborn, impossible people who cannot be reached. Why did you call me to this? I don't want to do this anymore. It's too frustrating. I'm not getting anywhere. Why? Why? What's the point? I'm done with this. I want to leave and not come back. I'm done. After getting all that off my chest, I just sat there. I didn't know what else to do or say. I certainly did not expect an answer. Sitting there in the stillness, I heard a voice. It was a clear voice from somewhere outside of me, far away, but it was also very close and inside me as well. It said very clearly, "These are my people, and I'm bringing them home to me." What was this? I'd never heard anything like this before. "You've got to be kidding me," I exclaimed. "These people have no interest in you. They're totally lost. That's ridiculous. I can't be hearing this. I refuse to hear this." I started crying. It wasn't a cry of sadness, more a cry of frustration. The voice spoke again. "These are my people, and I'm bringing them home to me." Was this God's voice? All I can say is it certainly was not my own. It went against everything I believed and wanted to believe. It totally changed my life. I no longer felt alone. I was simply a part of a bigger plan and needed to be faithful to this calling. It wasn't about me. It wasn't my job to stop the machine, to make this happen. All I was being asked to do was to be faithful. God had a plan. I needed to trust and realize that it was not all up to me. A great weight was lifted off my shoulder that night, and I moved forward with friends, holding this message and assurance close to me. It was all I had.
Thank you, Chris. There's a note in the chat about Chris's upcoming book by Michael. He has a book coming out called Who Turned on the Light? Stories of Hope and Healing, a modern Quaker memoir, and he was reading from a chapter in his upcoming book.